ATL Prime Sports, brought to you by the Association of Professional Ball Players of America. I'm Todd Corder. My guest is Randy Lurch, former Major League pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies, Milwaukee Brewers, Montreal Expos, and the San Francisco Giants. Randy has an exceptional book, God in the Bullpen, describing in detail his battle with drugs and alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. Welcome, Randy, to ATL Prime Sports.
Well, thank you for having me, Todd. It's an honor to be with you, especially talking to the folks back in Atlanta, Georgia. This is pretty special for me.
Well, this is special for me too. This book here, it was written with Harold Lurch, who's not a relative of yours, and we're going to give it a great plug today and talk about your baseball career and et cetera. So we'll get started. Randy, let's first talk about your childhood and sports. Who is the one person that's most responsible for your interest in baseball and other sports, and who did you learn the most from?
Well, that would be my father, Todd. My father was a semi-pro baseball player back here in Sacramento, California, and he's just an avid sports guy, but especially he loved the game of baseball, and he was real high on the fundamentals of the game. And I remember I used to when I was probably 8, 9 years old or something like that. Every Saturday we would watch the game of the week, and I think it was Tony Kubek and Joe Garagiola or something like that, and we would sit down and we would watch the game. And I remember like it was yesterday. I would be watching the game with awe and my big eyes and looking at those guys playing the game. And I would ask, I said, Dad, are those guys any good? And he would say, oh, son, those guys are all good. And I remember from that day on, I always wanted to be one of those guys and maybe make it to the major leagues one day.
You're listening to Randy Lurch here on ATL Prime Sports. Major League Baseball team, Major League Baseball player for 4 teams. Randy had an 11-year career in the big leagues. Randy, your church experience. Who was the one person who took you to church, and what did you love the most about going to church?
My mom came from a religious background. She came from the Baptist background, and I remember Mom taking us, my 2 brothers and sister, to church every Sunday. My dad wasn't much of a churchgoer, but my mom was the Christian, and she would bring us and drop us off to Sunday school. And I remember, man, I was so bored in Sunday school. I just wanted to run around and be a kid. But I remember the most fun was when Mom would allow us to go in and watch the main service, and I loved to watch and listen to the singing in church. But my mom was the churchgoer and Christian that led me to know the Lord.
Well, that's good. That's very good. Your high school baseball career was outstanding. You were undefeated in your senior year, going 13-0. You also had a great career at the plate. You were drafted by the Phillies in the 8th round. Why were you disappointed? And what were the 2 reasons why you were disappointed?
I think my biggest disappointment was that I don't know why. It was just, I guess it was inbred in me or whatever. My dad wasn't a pitcher. He was actually a shortstop and a good hitter, and he always taught me the fundamentals of every part of the game, including the fundamentals of pitching. But he always used to throw batting practice to me, and I just had a real knack for hitting. I loved to hit, even though I did have a real good career as a pitcher all through Little League. I threw a no-hitter and a perfect game in Little League, and then had I had one defeat in my high school career, and when I was drafted by the Phillies, I didn't really know what I was what the Phillies wanted me to do, because I was actually a high school All-American hitter. And so I asked my scout, Eddie Bachman, who drafted me, and I says, well, what am I? He says, well, the Phillies need pitching. You're left-handed. You throw hard. So let's try you out there. And if that doesn't work out, we'll make you, I said, we'll try you out as a pitcher. And then if that doesn't work out, you can be a hitter.
Randy, did you ever think that maybe you, instead of accepting I know your dad's the one that negotiated your contract, which was pretty amazing, because most players were getting 10 grand at the time, and now your dad negotiated your contract for around 20 grand. So he really had a big business sense. If you didn't get the contract you wanted, was there a fallback for you to go to college? Was there a school that you would have gone to?
I really wanted I really wanted to go to play professional baseball. I'd been recruited by Arizona State and USC to go play for them, but I wasn't a school kind of guy, and looking back on it, I wish I was now. But I just wanted to. I was recruited by colleges, but my main desire was to go and play professional sports. And looking back on it again, like I just said, I probably would have played for free.
You're listening to Randy Lurch, former Major League Baseball, who has a book that's called God in the Bullpen, A Big Leaguer's Battle with Drug and Alcohol Addiction and Cirrhosis. The Randy Lurch story. Go get it. Randy, you had a cup of coffee in 75 and 76 in the big leagues, but your quote-unquote rookie season was 1977. You went 10-6. You started out 4-0, and you got your first start versus the Dodgers and Tommy John, and you won the game. What a thrill for you and the team, and defeating that great lineup. Tell me about the Dodgers and your first victory against them, and a little bit about your 77 season before you went to Houston. The pitching game.
Those are some great memories. I was in awe of that Dodger team. I played pro sports long enough, played in the minor leagues long enough, and had a cup of coffee. And then once I made the major league team, I knew that the teams in the major leagues, with the Cincinnati Reds, Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Dodgers had some really good hitting teams. And when I went to play against the Dodgers, pitch against the Dodgers, and they, my buddy Dusty Baker and Steve Garvey and Ron Say and Reggie Smith and all those guys. I mean, they were a formidable team to pitch against, and to be able to beat them was a great honor and a great thrill. So it's a great memory too.
Well, they had Steve Garvey, Ron Say. I mean, this was a team that was a World Series contender every year. It was like a litmus test for you to see how well you did against them. And you passed with flying colors. What was your best pitch that day? Was it your fastball? What was it that you were able to beat the Dodgers with?
I was a fastball pitcher, Todd. I threw 95, 97 miles an hour. But you would find out in a real big hurry, or I found out in a real big hurry, that you just couldn't just try to throw a fastball past a good hitting team like the Dodgers with great hitters, and so I had to have everything working that day. I remember I had a guy on third base, I forget who it was, and I had the middle of the lineup. I had Baker, I think Reggie Smith and Garvey coming up, and I ended up being blessed to strike out the side of the man on third base, and with a combination of fastballs and sliders.
Oh, you know what? You're listening to Randy Lurch, God in the Bullpen, the Randy Lurch story, a big leaguer's battle and drug with alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. You're on ATL Prime Sports. Randy, next you had your first start in Houston in the Astrodome. You know, a veteran pitcher on the Phillies called you to his room, and your baseball career and your life changed forever. Please explain to the audience in detail how it changed and what happened.
Sure, Todd. This is probably this is the main reason for my book. It started my downfall with drugs and alcohol. I was 5-2 at the time, and had a veteran pitcher call me to his room and tell me, hey, somebody, the pitcher I looked up to and I trusted, successful, and said, look at it, with the long season and the way you get tired and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to last the whole season and a career unless you take these pills, which in those days we called them greenies, and they're amphetamines. And so when I took that pill, it made me feel, like I was just, I call it Mad Mountain Dean, but I felt, extra powerful and strong, and it took all my inhibitions and my nerves away, which I found out later that's something that I needed. I needed that to pitch and to be careful and to respect the hitters, and it took that all away. And then I found out I love that feeling. I found out when I took those pills that I couldn't sleep at night, and I found when I drank on them, it gave me an extra feeling of ecstasy, I should say, and so I kept doing that, and that was my downfall. I wasn't any more the pitcher that I was. I had a very successful, high school minor league career. I was minor league pitcher of the year one year with a great minor league career, made it to the major leagues at 20 years old, and then made the horrible mistake of taking pills and drinking on them, and I just never again was the pitcher I once was.
You were a better hitter, though, than the average hitting pitcher. I mean, you had 4 home runs and 23 RBIs in your career. On September 30th, 1978 was a special day in your career. Tell the audience about that.
That was a special day. We went into the last 4 games of the season, with the Philadelphia Phillies, into our nemesis or big rival, the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Phillies had been on a roll, winning the division a few years, along with the Pirates. We were always battling each other to the end, and we went into Pittsburgh with a 4-game series to play with a 3-game lead. We had a makeup doubleheader on a Friday, which we proceeded to lose that game in Pittsburgh again with a balk and a drop fly ball. My game was Saturday, so we had 2 games to play with a 1-game lead, and so I went out and I started that game and ended up giving up a grand slam to Willie Stargell in the first inning, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. And I thought to myself, well, it's time to, if we're going to lose this game, I'm going to make sure that I give everything I got, because we just can't come into Pittsburgh and lose this series. So I settled down and I pitched 5 more scoreless innings, and ended up hitting 2 home runs that ended up, I believe, tying up the game. And we went on to win and clinch the division championship that day.
Well, I mean, the home runs really had to have been special to win the division, because like you said, you struggled on the mound. So you said, hey, wait a minute, I'll just make up for my bat. And did you ask did you ask the manager at the time, Dallas Green, did you ask him to say, hey man, can I hit in front of Mike Schmidt or hit behind him? Maybe you guys can use an extra hitter.
Well, at that time it was Danny Ozark, but what was funny about that game is when I came up the next time, I came up with the bases loaded. I think it was Chuck Tanner was the manager with the Pirates, so he brought in I think Grant Jackson to pitch against me, a left-handed pitcher, And then Danny pinch hit for me with the bases loaded after I hit the 2 home runs, and I guess he figured if I didn't get a hit or struck out or something, he didn't want to hear the end of it if he didn't pinch hit for me. But he pinch hit for me, and my pinch hitter for me struck out to end that inning, and I left the game. I think we were winning 5-4 or something at that time. But I left for a pinch hitter after hitting 2 home runs.
You're thinking, wait a minute, I want to do 3. I don't blame you. You're listening to Randy Lurch here on ATL Prime Sports, talking about his book, God in the Bullpen, the Randy Lurch story, a big leader's battle with drug and alcohol and cirrhosis. Randy, in 78 and 81, tell me in detail, you pitched in the playoffs. What was that like? Did your approach change at all for those games? And by that time, was your addiction getting worse?
No, I stayed pretty much the same. My deal was I would take my greenies before the games, and then go and party afterwards and party in between. And then I would rest before the day before I pitched. But I never went out there without taking the greenies, which changed my whole attitude in a negative way. But when I pitched in the playoffs in 1978 against the Los Angeles Dodgers, I pitched, I think, 5 2/3 or 6 innings and gave up 3 runs. So I had a quality start that game, and we ended up losing the game in extra innings. That's the year that the Dodgers went on to play the Yankees in the World Series, and I think the Yankees beat them. That might have been the series where Reggie Jackson hit all those home runs. I'm not sure. But we lost to the Dodgers in 1978. And then when I got traded to the Milwaukee Brewers in 1981, I pitched against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. And that's a year where you had Dave Winfield and Reggie Jackson and Willie Randolph, Greg Nettles. So Bob Watson, they had a great team, and I pitched in Yankee Stadium, and I 3-hit them for 6 innings, and we ended up winning that game against the Yankees in the playoffs again for the Brewers, and that was the first playoff win first playoff win in Brewers history.
Well, that's the way to do it. If you're, you make history for the Milwaukee Brewers, and you faced a great lineup. Now, 1980, this was a season that was rough. You went 4-14 for the Phillies. You were left off the postseason roster. You had a falling out with manager Dallas Green. Tell me about that. Why do you think you struggled? But you had some good quality starts, but you struggled. Tell me about that season in particular in 80. And what was going on?
I don't really know why Dallas Green. It seemed like Dallas Green wasn't a fan of mine, or I wasn't. I should turn it around and say I wasn't a fan of his, and so it just seemed like the more pressure I felt, the worse I pitched. I was somebody that, I guess you might say that I was kind of I needed to be praised or whatever, and that's on a veteran lineup and stuff like that. I didn't handle it the way I should have, and I ended up not pitching good enough to deserve to be on the roster at the end of the year. Never heard of it before in those days. Wasn't explained to me. So at the end of the year, I got blindsided by being left off of the playoff and World Series rosters, and that was really, really tough on me, and that took a long time to get over.
Oh, I can't blame you here. You had success in 78, and then not knowing what was coming up in 81 because it was 80. You thought, hey, I've got the playoff experience. I want to be in the rotation, and it just didn't work out for you. You were also in a I don't know if the word scandal is appropriate, but it was involving amphetamines that were taken by several members of the team in 80. In 81, you had to testify under an oath that the Phillies team position for its AA affiliate in Reading and Reading, PA, had prescribed amphetamines for the big league club. What was the time like for you? What was it like for you at that time? And how did you feel having to go through all this after a rough season that you had in 1980? And you know, I mean, this just, you must have been feeling really down along with the members on your team.
That certain Todd, that was certainly one of the low points of my life. You know, all this happened at the same time. This is and I explained it, you know, for the first time. This is the first time I'd ever explained it after like 35 or 40 years. I held this secret to what really happened, and I finally put it in the book because I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want my life to end without at least everybody knowing that. You know, I was left off the, you know, the playoff roster at the same time this drug scandal was going on, and then after the World Series and all that I went through, then it was the, you know, the drug scandal, that had been brewing, and then the court appearance, and a player. Or I should say, a teammate of mine put my name on a prescription without my permission, and then when I went to court, I went up and told the truth of what really happened, but I never mentioned anybody's name, so I basically took the heat for the whole thing, it didn't bode good for my career afterwards, because every time I had a bad game or whatever, people. They say, well, he must be on drugs again. And so it just seemed to snowball after that, and had some good moments through my career the rest of the way, but a lot of bad ones too.
Well, you know, I mean, like I said, it was subscribed. The amphetamines were described by the physician at the AA affiliate for the major league club, and you testified under oath that this was done. What happened to that individual that did it in the Phillies organization? I mean, you went under oath, you took the heat for yourself and all your teammates. And what ended up happening to the position that was at the WA affiliate for the Phillies at that time, prescribing stuff for the Major League Ball Club? I mean, you would think the front office would have stopped it right then and there, or they didn't know about it.
No, they didn't know about it. And what happened when he had been the AA doctor, and it's documented, so I can mention his name, Dr. Mazza, and he was a great guy. He was the AA doctor that most of the players that were getting the amphetamines were getting them from him for a while, and so he knew them. The reason it came, forward to where it came to the notice was the DEA of Pennsylvania saw that these, what do they call them, class 2 or 3 drugs were being, these prescriptions were being written, and they actually thought they had famous people's names on them, and they actually thought that this guy was writing them for a profit, and the guys knew nothing about him. So this was a preliminary trial under oath, and when it all came to play, and I said no, the players were the ones that knew about it. They threw the case out. It really, he knew the players, and he had seen them before, so he really didn't break the law.
Was this popular in Major League Baseball at the time? Were a lot of players doing this? And if they were, what percentage in your mind were players taking something?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really want to go down that road, because I would be saying something I don't know. All I know is that I took them, and that a few players on the Phillies did. The guys that they were at the trial and stuff, but not being on other teams, I really couldn't answer that truthfully.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. You're listening to Randy Lurch, the Randy Lurch story, God in the bullpen at big leaguers battle with drugs and alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. Randy, let's go ahead and we'll go into the 1981. You were traded after the 1980 season. You were traded to the Brewers. You got to pitch for them in the playoffs. You had the opportunity for a fresh start. Did you think about when you had the fresh start with the Brewers? Did you think about getting off the greenies and the drugs and the alcohol with the new ball club and trying to come in with a fresh start? Or did a new ball club make you think, oh, I better keep doing what I'm doing here? They'll send me on my way.
I was still at the point where I didn't think that I had a problem. I mean, I that was the way that I was taught, that this is what you needed to do, and so I kept doing what I've been doing for years. I never used them once I wasn't starting, in other words, when I was in the bullpen, because you never knew when you were going to pitch, and so the days I would start, I would take them, and that was the norm for me. Actually, it had been so long since I'd done it without them. I was afraid if I could even perform if I didn't have the drugs in me. At that point, I didn't think of it of being addicted until I was able to look back on it and say, "Holy cow, what were you doing?" But I pitched well. I pitched some real good games for the Brewers, and I pitched some bad games. I was inconsistent my whole career. But I didn't start another major league game since the day in Houston without taking amphetamines.
Okay. So you go to the American League. There's no DH. How big of a bummer was that for you mentally, knowing you're not going to get a chance to hit?
It killed me. It was kind of it's a funny story. I think it's a great, not funny, it's a great story. I was actually traded for a guy with the Brewers that I actually had had a higher lifetime batting average than that person did, and so the word got out that I was a good hitter. In my first spring training with the Brewers, Harvey Keene was the hitting coach, and with Buck Rogers being the manager, one day, when spring training was going on, Harvey Keene came over and said, Buck would like you to stay after so I could watch you hit. So I thought, wow, okay. Well, I hadn't grabbed the bat in since the year before, and I didn't take much batting practice or any even when I was back with the Phillies being a pitcher. And so I stayed after, and believe it or not, God was with me. I took the best batting practice that I think I've ever taken in my life. I was like Gorman Thomas with the Brewers said, I was launching, man. I was hitting home runs to every field. And afterwards, Harvey Keene took me up to the manager, Buck Rogers' office, and said, man, kid, that was a great display. And Buck said, yeah, you really did it to yourself, because now I want you to make every spring training game on the road, where I was a starting pitcher with the Brewers, and you only had to travel every 5 days, every time you pitched, not every day. But after I put on that display, I had to travel with the team all of spring training. And when the season started, I hit with the extra men in all the different ballparks. I got to hit in Boston and Detroit and all that stuff in batting practice, which was a great thrill being a pitcher. But after I didn't take any, I didn't pinch hit at all, and I was taking too many of the extra men swings, and I was getting dirty looks from my hitting teammates. I quit. But that was a good story.
That is good. Was this Brewers club that you played in 81 and then partial 82 season before you got traded to Montreal? Because you had bad luck again. This was a team, Milwaukee, that went to the World Series the next year, and they fell short, but they still went. And then you got left off the 80 club in the playoffs for the Phillies in the World Series. So here you were not only snake bitten once, but twice. But how did you feel about that, one? And two, what was the better club, the Brewers or the Phillies?
Well, if anything, that'll drive you to drink one at a time, yes. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it actually when I was called in by Harvey Keene, and he was the manager then. Buck was gone, and I had been inconsistent, and they had made a deal for Don Sutton, and so I was expendable, and that was I think I had won 8 games up to that point, and again my 500 inconsistent self, but I had pitched some good games that year. But then when they had a chance to go down into the playoffs with a pitcher like Don Sutton, they took that, and I think one of the Expos pitchers, I forget who it was that got hurt. It might have been left-hander like Dan Shafted or something like that. But they left-hander got hurt with the Expos. They were looking for somebody, and I'd always pitched good against the Montreal Expos, another great team. So I was dealt to them.
Well, I mean, if you're going to get dealt, I guess if they're going to mention you and Don Sutton in the same message, I mean, Don Sutton's a Hall of Famer. That can't be a bad thing at all. I mean, it just didn't work out for you. Life is about timing, and it just wasn't meant to be.
No, I mean, nothing's going to make you feel any better, but if you could just grab a few straws out of it, at least Don Sutton took my place.
What ball club was better, though? Were the Brewers better or were the Phillies better? Because I'm going to guess the Brewers maybe had the better lineup and maybe the Phillies had the better pitching staff, or tell me what you thought.
Holy cow, you're right. I think I think the Brewers probably had overall. I mean, when you're talking Robin Yount Hall of Fame, Paul Mahler Hall of Fame, then you got Ted Simmons, who's just going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. You had Cecil Cooper and Ben Oglevie, Gorman Thomas. I mean, that was ridiculous, and those guys were amazing. And you know what happens a lot, Todd, is people forget how great that Montreal Expo team was. I mean, you had Gary Carter, who's the greatest catcher I ever threw to, and then you had Andre Dawson and Tim Raines, 2 Hall of Famers there. So there's 3 Hall of Famers, along with Ellis Valentine, Warren Cromartie, Larry Parrish. I mean, they were an amazing lineup too. I think the downfall to them was the travel and stuff like that, living out of the United States. But I mean, I was blessed to play for 3 amazing baseball teams.
Well, there's no question about it. It had to say a lot about your ability, because every team you were on was a contender not only for the playoffs, but for the World Series. It has to say a lot about you as an individual, your adaptability to be able to go from one club to the other. Let's jump ahead. We don't have much time left. You're listening to Randy Lurch here. He has a book, God in the Bullpen, the Randy Lurch story, a big leaguer's battle with drugs and alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. Let's go ahead and jump ahead. After your baseball career, how much influence did God have in your recovery from the drugs and the alcohol? And you said in your book, God has become your ultimate relief pitcher. How much do you go ahead. I was going to say, how much do you incorporate that? Go ahead and answer the first part, and I'll ask the next part. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. But when I ended up being diagnosed with cirrhosis, my belly grew. I ended up having 80 pounds of fluid drained off my stomach. I was literally dying, and when I went to my liver specialist, he wanted to put me on the liver transplant list, but I told him, I said, sir, I said, I did it to myself. I said, You know, I'm 62 years old at that time, and I said, you need to give the liver to somebody that really didn't abuse themselves like I did. And when on my way out the doctor's office, he put his arm around me and said, I just want you to know that you can go into liver failure at any time. Meaning, when I walked out that door, I was a walking dead man. And I looked at my wife and little Maria, and I said, honey, I'm going to give it everything I can, to stay around as long as I can. And through prayer, a lot of prayer. And I always had that foundation from my mama of God living in me. And even though of all the mistakes I made, I still had God living in me. And then when I reached down deep and asked for his help, he was there for me. And when I started eating right and doing the right things, I started getting stronger. And God gave me another chance, Todd, to write this book. And it's been so well received because it's not just a book of drug and alcohol abuse. It's a book of hope. I'm sorry. Because in God's hope and grace, he can, even through this pandemic and everything, it's a book of inspiration that God has blessed me to write.
Well, you wrote in the book that God has become your ultimate relief pitcher, your closer. How much do you incorporate God in your life today? It sounds like that you incorporated a ton. Now you can't go to church every Sunday unless it's online. Were you going to church every Sunday once you beat this and you recovered? Were you going to church? Were you sending the message? Were you, what did you do?
Absolutely. I started going to church. We picked out a church through prayer, and we just love it. And one of my dreams was to always, before I got the cirrhosis, was to read the Bible from cover to cover. And I would always pick something out, and I'd say, this is just too thick and too big. And once God gave me another chance, or through this process, I read the Bible twice or once, and then now I'm on my third time, and then we go to church, but when we could, a couple times a week, and just praise God. And on top of it, I got on to promote the book. I got on the Facebook, and I have over 3,000 followers and friends, and talk to people on Messenger, and I talk to a lot of people struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, and just, and looking for hope in their life. And out of all the 3,000 people, I've answered and talked to at least a sentence or two, and talked to a lot of them for hours sometimes, just talking to them about the hope in Jesus Christ.
Well, that is awesome. I can say I have never gotten through the Bible. I'm one of those type of individuals that I read the devotionals that are next to my bed. That seems to be my attention span at times when everything else is going around. But I do read the devotionals next to my bed, and I find those powerful, especially at this time in our life where we have this coronavirus pandemic and et cetera. And now we all go to church online, and I hope and pray for everyone out there and for you and everybody that will be able to go back to church normally one day real soon. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today. Tell the audience about your book one more time and where they can get it.
Sure. Thank you, Todd. It's called God in the Bullpen. And I call it my book of hope because I think this book is perfect not for people who struggle with addiction, but also people that are looking for hope in this times of uncertainty. You can get it at Amazon or Google Books. I'm sorry, Amazon, not Google Books, Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And if you want to write me, you can get a hold or send me something, maybe even some baseball cards or something at 3450 Palmer, Palmer Drive. That's Suite 4-196, Cameron, Cameron Park, California 95682.
Can you repeat that address one more time for the audience out there?
Sure. 3450 Palmer, Palm, as in man, ER, Drive, Suite 4-196. That's in Cameron, Cameron Park, California, 95682.
Randy,
And if people get it,
I'm sorry, go
a
ahead.
lot of people get the book. If they want to send the book, I'll sign it for them.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for coming on, Randy. We're out of time today. Thank you so much, and we hope to hear from you down the road here on ATL Sports really soon.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. Howdy to everybody in Atlanta.
Thank you. Thank you. That's Randy Lurch, former Major League Baseball player, played 11 years in the big leagues, played for 4 different Major League Baseball clubs, has an excellent book out, God in the Bullpen, the Randy Lurch story, a big leaguer's battle with drug and alcohol addiction and cirrhosis. I want to let everybody know about tomorrow's show. It starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our guest is 92.9 The Game's Atlanta's Sam Crenshaw. For Todd Corder, for Breck in San Francisco, I want to thank you, everybody, for listening to today's show. You can go check it out on replay on YouTube, on Facebook, and wherever else you can listen to it. You can get it on the replay on Twitter and all your social media outlets. Thank you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow at 8 o'clock here on ATL Prime Sports. Good afternoon, everybody.